Well, welcome to Volunteer Corner. Somebody pretty special here. This is Sue Glenn, like Jane and I. She lives in Old South, not too far from us. And you're a volunteer at the food bank, and I'm trying to remember if I did my notes right, but you've been there since 2016.
Yeah, I was trying to remember like how long, 2016, 2018, but yeah, a long time. It's gone by fast,
Yeah.
for sure.
Where did your desire for volunteering come from? Not just for the food bank, but just in general.
In general, I took an early retirement, and I
From
was a very popular insurance company
okay,
in
all
London.
right, okay,
Anyways,
yeah,
I was early retirement, and I was bored. And one of your employees lived on my street, and we
yeah,
acquaintanced. We
yeah,
knew each other.
yeah,
And I just one day had to call her and say, I need to be doing something
yeah,
with my time. I've got too much time on my
yeah,
hand. And she was like, come on down.
yeah,
And right away. And I think she wanted me more on the office side of
yeah,
things, but I wanted to be a little bit more active and
yeah,
physical.
yeah.
And
So would that be Marianne McDowell?
that
Because
would be
she
Marianne.
lived on your street
She
there. I
did,
remember. Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's right.
Yeah. She's a
She's
great
been
lady.
awesome. She's been with us a long, long
Yes, she
time. So
has. Yeah.
and so you did that, but did you volunteer before?
I did a little bit of volunteering in long-term care
Okay. Yeah.
with it was with art, like in the evenings, a little craft and
Yeah.
arts and crafts. But I got kind of emotional.
Yeah.
Got attached and emotional to
Yeah.
people. So yeah,
Yeah. I had that same problem. When I first came to London, I worked at this Veterans Hospital at Oxford and Wellington, and it used to be called the psychiatric wing of Victoria Hospital. But these were all veterans that were there. And I remember my dad was a veteran, had been badly wounded in World War II. So I just got so attached almost right away. And sometimes that's not the best thing, right?
exactly.
Some of the people needed a more stringent type of care, and I was finding it really, really difficult.
It is
So,
difficult. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
But obviously, you got a heart for other people, so
Yeah.
that's good. And at the food bank, what do you do?
I am the Friday morning egg, milk, and bread girl.
Well,
I prepare the baskets
yeah,
that
yep,
as people come in,
yeah.
and yeah, I love it.
It's a funny story, but years ago, I was in charge of all of Ontario's food banks. I was the chair of them, and then Jane replaced me after my 2 years were up. But I remember during my time, I went to a place called Van Clayk Hill, and interestingly, it's where my grandmother came from, which I didn't know at the time.
Wow.
From Van Clayk Hill, it's in Ontario. It's not all that far from Ottawa. But it's the Canadian Dairy Board. There was a story on CBC TV, and it showed them dumping millions of liters of
Yeah.
milk away. And I remember that
Yeah.
kind of bothered me. So I phoned
Yes.
the person that had been in the interview. He said, "Well, come on up and we'll have a talk." So I did, and so I remember saying to him, like, milk and dairy products are really tough for food banks to be able to get. Studies from a lot of food banks back then didn't even have storage capacity for things like that, right? They were so good. They sat down and said, "Okay, well, how many food banks are there?" I said, "Look, it needs to be national, not just Ontario." They agreed with that.
Yeah.
So they did it all, and they said, "Look, we will pasteurize it, but we will also package it, and we will also deliver it." And I remember,
Your
whoa.
eyes must have been
Oh, I
like,
did.
whoa.
It did. And I remember all food banks were such in need of these things, and they were so great. But he explained to me, we have to, because the liability things, because it's perishable items,
Right.
because the liability things are like that, we can't afford to be vulnerable on that. That all of a sudden, somebody might pick it up from here and not get it to the food bank for 2 or 3 days. Could go bad. We get the blame. He said, it all made perfect sense. But the dairy board was so fantastic,
It's
right?
amazing.
But they did all of that, and we saved all of those millions of liters of milk that were
They're
going down
going down the
and,
drain.
and nobody ever covered that part of the story, which is too bad. We let the media know that this is how the dairy board acted very responsibly. It was great. But anyway, but just imperishables themselves, Sue, like I would say it was 10 years ago, 25% of our food was perishable. And now it's 56%. So a lot of that is that people will think, oh, it's because of your greenhouse or because of all the vegetables. That's true, but we also purchase milk now and dairy products in a lot greater quantity than we used to. The public's generosity and things have really shifted more towards online donations of money than physical giving of food. And so therefore we've been able to take that money and be able to get more of these dairy products to put in there. And our clients have noticed the difference. Yeah.
Well, it's a great thing to have. Milk is expensive.
Yeah.
It's expensive, so it's something great that we can give out.
Yeah. It was always hard though for years. Like this is our 39th year now that we're going into, but you can only, in the early days especially, you could only give out what you had.
Yeah.
And I remember in our very first food drive back in 1986, I think it was, or 87, and a lot of food came in. We didn't know what to expect, but a lot of it had been in the freezer for a year, or like people just didn't know what to give.
Yeah.
It was hard for them, but over the course of the next few years, people, they got used to what it was that food bank needed, and they gave it. But still, you were limited to whatever they gave. We didn't have much in the way of money back then, so we couldn't really purchase whatever we were short of. Those days have really changed, right? I think that food banks just in general have learned to put money aside for these perishable products. And they do, and a lot of that is not just because the public has been pushing for that, but the health unit has said, look, if you're trying to give balanced hampers, you would understand this better than I would.
Yeah.
You need to put that stuff in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find working with the food bank with the other volunteers? There's a lot, right? In the pandemic, our food bank numbers doubled. So now there's a lot of people around. How do you feel about that?
I have so much fun.
Do you? With anybody in
Boston
particular?
and the Leafs, the Bruins and the
There
Leafs.
you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I got to
yeah.
bring that up.
Yeah.
My Bruins fans.
Yeah, well,
But it's always a pleasure to come in. Everybody's kind, and if you're struggling or they see that you're super busy, they'll lend a hand
Yeah.
or they'll set you up. Like there's no issues. It's a lot of fun. Met a lot of great people from all different backgrounds, and
Yeah.
It's something that I enjoy doing every year. I look forward to coming every week.
Every Friday.
Every
morning?
Friday mornings,
Yeah.
yeah.
Boston or Leafs fan? Which are you?
Bruins.
You're a Bruins fan. So Jane.
Yes, Jane.
Jane's favorite was
Yeah.
Bobby Orr, but Jane, however, supports the Leafs.
Well, I didn't know that story about
you
Bobby
okay.
because she kind of gives myself and another fellow
Yeah.
a rough time
Does
about
she?
being Bruins.
Well, she shouldn't, because Bobby Orr's always been her favorite. What do you think? Things changed so much since the pandemic.
Yeah.
I've been doing a series on the pandemic
Yeah.
for Rogers TV and just what it changed for the food bank. What did it change for you as far as the food bank piece goes? Did you notice a huge difference once that came along?
Well, what I noticed was the vegetables before people used to be able to pick.
Yeah.
They would come into the building, and that was sometimes a little difficult to control. Not that,
Yeah.
that I was a part of it, but I saw that.
Yeah.
So now it's nice that it's all packaged up, and
Yeah.
people get an assortment of different fruits
Yeah.
and vegetables. So that, to me, is something that was positive that came
Yeah.
out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's an awful lot of negative, but there has been a few positive things in this world that came out that we didn't know how to do. We would never know how to do something different. But it was interesting times overall. It was,
Well, we had a lot of volunteers. Half of our volunteers came during the pandemic.
yeah,
So when it started, a lot of agencies closed down or limited their operations.
yeah,
So when we were speaking with the city leaders, they said, "Look, you guys got to stay open. You're helping all these
Yeah,
groups."
yeah.
So we did. We didn't ask for more volunteers. We didn't know how because, everybody was wearing masks. They didn't know what kind of mask. People had to register. We were working
Yeah.
with the health unit.
yeah,
But people just started phoning in right out of the blue once they saw a news story that showed the food bank was still open. And I was just amazed at how many Londoners came down, despite that we didn't understand COVID very well
No.
yet. But they came to the food bank and wanted to volunteer. And I remember there was some debate back and forth even with the staff, like, do we want to allow that? On the other hand, we were helping so many different agencies at that time. We needed all the help we could get. But you were there before that.
oh yes,
And then you came into
Into-
that.
yeah.
And could you sense the confusion we all felt? Even as staff or leaders?
like it was just difficult to know how now people weren't coming into the building. They, we had to go outside and deliver the food to them. But I don't know. I think it was overall an experience being there during a pandemic, and you do what you got to do, right? You make something work. Things will work. You put a mask on, you sanitize your hands, you stay away, there were some jokes too with having to wear, masks. So you just make the best of things.
It was hard for Jane and I because we'd always, although we'd been there from the beginning, we'd always worked together out in the community. It was our job to educate, speak at schools, university, whatever, but also to get in the money and get in the food. But then once COVID came, it became very obvious that things down at the food bank were going to be quite precarious. There were going to be some that were there who did not like the fact that certain people could be in a certain proximity or whatever it is, right? Like everybody had different feelings about it, which is totally understandable. We'd never been through that before. But Jane had to go down and manage that. And it wasn't easy. There were some people that left over that, but we ended up with hundreds that ended up coming in during that time. But I remember for us, it was very hard because it was kind of gone were the days of she and I getting up in the morning and going speaking here or there. And then so my job became the community and bringing in all that stuff, and hers was down at the food bank.
Yeah.
But I remember her telling me just, people like Marianne, who you know well and you're close to, and other staff and other volunteers. Some of our volunteers have been there a long time. Just that as confusing as it was, and sometimes people would have an opinion on things, they worked it out. Yeah, because you have to, just as you said,
Why makes a difficult situation more difficult? That's easy to do.
Yeah.
But you can turn it around and make it something,
a
joke here and there, or, I don't know.
We were so ignorant of it all, Sue. We just didn't know what was going on. And then I remember one company came to me and said they were a high-tech group that fumigated places. So there was a special concoction back then that was sprayed into the building, and this firm came in with their big hoses and big suction trucks and everything, and they sprayed the whole building, including the warehouse, the vents, the washrooms, the kitchen, the front area, every office. They came in and sprayed it all down over the course of the weekend. And back then we were told that if you touch that surf, if I touch it and then you touch it, you could get COVID. Well, we didn't know for a year that wasn't the way it worked. So this group came in, and I remember our volunteers were just so interested that happened, and they fumigated the place for 2 days, and the bill was $70,000, right? And they did it for free, right? And I just remember that, and I remember the effect that also had on the volunteers because they felt more secure going into a place that had had been done. But we were all just so confused. And now that the pandemic has kind of, to a certain degree, ended, how do you feel about the community now? Not so much the food bank, but where do you think we're at as a community about things?
I'm impressed by the corporate sponsorship. It's people are waking up a little bit and seeing how important it is to give and how easy it is to give, whether it's your time or your food drives. As a working in the corporate world, I know what that's like, and it's nice to see corporations. Why not?
There's 700 of them that work with the food bank, so they're part of Business Cares, and so they don't just help every December. Like they raise over $1 million worth of food every December. They're helping us throughout the year as well, but there are other food banks that don't have that blessing that we do. They have businesses that help, but those businesses themselves are not organized in most cases. So it's individual groups coming in, which is great. It's really appreciated. But Wayne Dunn has organized the business community in such a way that they can maximize their giving. So they leverage it, or they get other groups, or they challenge one another. The home builders will challenge the construction workers.
That's the way it should be. Make it fun, right?
But they have, as we have had to organize for things, they have really organized and been terrific. But I'll just be honest with you, I worry a bit about the community where it's at. A lot of people are stressed and lonely, and it's hard. And then you saw the food bank numbers just soar once the pandemic ended, right? And the government supports came off.
Exactly. That's where, I've been there for a long time, and once in a while you'd have, prior to the pandemic and everything, once in a while you'd have a busy Friday.
Yeah.
People say to me, what's it like? Is it really busy? And I go, it's so busy that it's just normal to me now.
Yeah.
It's just busy.
Yeah.
It's just busy. You see people lined up and waiting their turn. And
yeah. Do you have, like our numbers went up 91% in 2 years, right? In the last 2 years of the pandemic. So, I mean, but the point is, I think we just absorbed it as an organization, people like you and others, that they all stepped up and we just kept moving
you
on
just
ahead.
do it. It's not a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's only a few hours a week. And it's fun, and I'm on my toes, like I'm keeping my shelves full. And
yeah. Do you have a favorite thing about volunteering at Food Bank?
I think the favorite thing is the people.
Mm-hmm. Lots of people say that, yeah.
It's just a good group of people from all different backgrounds, and like I said, they can't. The people that work for the food bank can't be more helpful, or if you need some extra help, they're right there. It's just you work as a team.
Yeah. In the early days, Jane and I, we were both volunteers, and but we said, look, we're going to build our future on the public and on our volunteers, not on our staff or specific expertise in fundraising or whatever. I was so glad we did that, because other food banks our size, they're 25 staff, things like that, right? We've never done that. We now have 9, but for a long time we just had the 6.
Yeah.
And but the volunteers, they just came in, they fit in, and we deputize them, so to speak, give them responsibilities on our behalf. So we've never had to expand very much that way, because the volunteers have been so consistent and so good.
And of different vast backgrounds too, like all different backgrounds. Some people, drive the big trucks, and some people go pick up this, and
But as soon as you talk politics, if you did, poof, everybody scatters. But they don't do that down there.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing, and it keeps all this diversity together. Yeah. They're there for a reason.
They're there for a reason, but like you do talk about current events a little bit, like the Stanley Cup or things like
That's permissible
like
in Canada. That one's okay. Yeah.
But no, overall, like I don't know, just something I look forward to, and I leave feeling, really good about spending a couple hours at the food bank, helping people out, helping people in the community. It's not hard.
I asked a few people what you were like before, because I knew you were coming today. It was all positive. Hockey never emerged as part of the discussion. Jane would have brought it up, I'm sure, but they all speak so positively. But everybody does have one another there. That's what's so beautiful about it. But we really appreciate your help,
thanks.
Sue. Thank you very much. And for Fridays and what you do, we have, I had Peter Garland in here, and he's on Thursdays.
Oh, okay.
So they kind of have a team, right, that works together, and you're part of the Friday team. But it's interesting how those teams cooperate so well and get along so well, and they really enjoy seeing one another.
Oh yeah, there's always something you have, something in common with everybody, whether it's your pets, your kids, gardening.
Yeah,
you can speak about anything.
Well, thanks for making our Fridays so special for the last almost decade. I really appreciate it, Sue.
No problem.